All right. So, what's the first question?
First question. First question. Okay, really complicated one, man. Full name and age.
Oh man.
Real tough.
Well, that's classified, unfortunately.
Oh,
My
classified.
name. My name is Ranon Sarono. I'm 25 years old,
Ooh.
and that's the first question.
Yep. Oh man, dude.
I live in California. I've been in California for coming up in June, July. It'll be 6 years, which is really bizarre how time flies. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Nice. Okay, so second question. How would you consider your time working at Respawn and Infinity Ward?
Man, I'll start with Respawn since I started there first. I joined Respawn in 2015. My first day was July 6th, I believe. And wow, I have never worked at on like a team before, and I've never even been around with people who like did what I did. So it was a really big culture shock. I mean, I grew up basically just working with the community, like communities online with like modding and stuff, and this just like blew me away. Like as soon as I stepped in the office, people are creating things. There's computers everywhere. There's animators. There's artists and whatnot, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And I'm super overwhelmed because I'm like, oh man, how can I even? Oh man, I hope I'll be good enough, and I hope that people will like me and such. And at Respawn, it was great. By the time I left Respawn, I probably knew maybe a good 85 to 90% of the people there by name, and like we all knew each other. Like it was a family, and it was great. We had so much fun working on Titanfall 2, and I started, I think, a year in development. From the time I started, Titanfall 2 was already a year in development, and I learned a whole lot from Mark Grigsby, who was the lead animator there. Now I work for him again here at Infinity Ward where he is the animation director, and he taught me a lot. He took care of me, and the rest of the team there is full of great people. It was a very fun process. I mean, so when I first started like modding, I started out way back in the day modding Quake, and then I moved on to the Source engine, and I stuck with that for a few years, and I was tired of it. I was like, I'm so done with the Source engine. I'm sick and tired of this. And then when I went there at Respawn on my first day, they're like, okay, we're gonna show you the engine, we're gonna show you how it works, and all that stuff. And I noticed, oh, this is the Source engine. I thought I was gonna get away from it. And just be done with it. And I tell them, yeah, I know how this engine works. I'll be good. And they're like, oh, sweet, great. We don't need to reteach you and everything of that sort. And it was great. And the amount of memories that I have working at Respawn, working on Titanfall 2 and Apex Legends was it was a journey. And then when I switched to Infinity Ward, Mark Grigsby, he got me. he convinced me to come on over to work on Modern Warfare, which is pretty crazy because back in the day when I started animating, it was around 2009 to 2010, and I believe that's when Modern Warfare 2 came out. I think it was 2009, and when that game came out, good lord, people were flocking to like replicate those view model animations. Like they were the top dog back in the day. and so many people. It was so many people tried to mimic it and imitate it, and yeah, I was one of them. I was like, oh my goodness, I want to be this good. This is amazing. Of course, everybody wants to do better and just like perfect that craft. And Mark Griesby was one of those people who made a lot of those view model animations, and it's crazy to think I'm working with him now, working on like I worked on Modern Warfare with him, like this new one. I'm like, what? That's so weird. Like I'm working with the guy who pretty much directly inspired me, and I've learned a lot in the craft of just animation and just going into the nitty gritty details this time around. Because at Respawn, I was learning a lot just of what it's like to be in the industry, and I had a lot of leg room. We just did kind of whatever we wanted at Respawn because we just had a ton of ideas. Like when you go with space game, there's a lot of ideas. When you're going with modern military, yeah, you have to kind of be grounded, but in that limitation and that confine of the subject matter comes a lot of experimentation just in animation itself, and it's really good. It's fun. Like it's pretty wild. But yeah, Infinity Ward's great. They treat me well, and I like what we're doing.
Oh, okay. You're going really in depth. I appreciate that. Didn't expect you
Yeah,
to
no worries.
ramble on, but like I like that. So everybody was trying to copy the floaty like original Modern Warfare animations back then.
Yeah, it was pretty wild to see how many people like went into that. Like one of the big man. Well, there was one person who pretty much got it. It was a guy that also inspired me back in the day. He went by "I'm broke, are you?" His name was Leo, and he pretty much nailed that style of just the classic Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2 vibes. And everyone was like, "He got it! Hire him! Infinity Ward, hire him!" Well, yeah, he was the one that really like took off with it, and he carried it, and a lot of people were inspired by him, and he was a big influence for a lot of the animators back in the day. And it's wild to see that cycle of, oh, I want to be like this person, and then someone later down the line will say, oh, I want to be like that person. And then it just keeps going and going. Everybody starts influencing each other and not really coming to that realization of, oh, like people have been influenced by so many others, and those people who are influenced influence others, and so on and so forth. It's crazy just to
Yeah,
see like how because it happens. Like that's just the cycle of game development and art in general.
okay. Yeah, that's crazy because like now everyone's trying to copy your team style now. Me
Yeah,
also, my
yeah, it's pretty
shotgun, that
wild.
was like the most influenced I've been by the Modern Warfare 2019. It's pretty it's pretty nice. Okay, so
Yeah,
third question. How do you think the Modern Warfare style has influenced the FPS genre and the public's perception on view model animation?
this one's really tricky because the word style is a bit vague, and I think it can mean very many different things for people. Because like if you look at style in our game, like I'm thinking, oh, okay, like it's not as super flashy, and there's not like a crazy amount of exaggerated like poses compared to something like Valorant or Overwatch. Like that has style. And of course, like I get tunnel vision because I know there is style in my game, but I can't explain it because like we made it. And it's always easier. Like I know in my head of like what I'm doing, but it's really hard to put into words sometimes. Of like, oh, this is the style. It's more like a oh man, do you call it? It's like a, oh man, I was just looking this up today. I can't remember what it is, but it's more, when I think of style in our game, I think, okay, people see tactical reloads as a style kind of like preference, and of course, yeah, it's cool. Like I've only seen that in a few other instances in games, but never really like, oh, that's like that's a commonplace. That's a standard of like modern military techniques and stuff like that. And man, because I always think of style as in, okay, you're going from point A to point B, but it's really how you get from point A to point B. And when we were developing like Modern Warfare with our animations, we thought like, okay, it's not about it looking real in our animations. It's about having the feeling of it be real. Like I look at my lead's animations of the one of his weapons, and when it reloads, like it looks insane. Like it's so good. And but the thing is, not only that, I feel it. Like I feel the weight in my body, and it feels like I'm doing that. And that's the feeling that we want to capture, because that's what animation is. It's not always just making something look real. It's about making something feel real. And that's a huge thing. And I think people don't always catch on to that. Like they'll notice it. They'll see that something is there, that it clearly looks different and feels different, and I see people try to capture that. They some are super close. Like they starting to get it, but they kind of go off and do their own thing of what they think it is, and it's pretty crazy, because you see that in so many people's animations nowadays, that they're trying to do what we do while not completely understanding what it is that what we did makes the way our weapons feel. And the perception of that is, oh, like it ranges everything from, oh, that guy looks like he's super shaky, to, oh wow, these animations are the best thing I've ever seen, to, oh well, this game did it better, what about Insurgency or Squad or something like that.
Hmm.
And it's pretty wild, because everybody's perception is different and everybody takes it in a different way, but it does make its way around, and people, like, yeah, people study it, and they get close. Some people get close to understanding why. Um, but I'm sure as time goes on, people will be influenced in that area and go off on their own and trying to do a whole different style of view model animations, and it just keeps on changing every year. And hopefully, like with this, with Modern Warfare out, we're like, all right, like step it up, view model animators, like show us what you got, do better than us. That's what I always think, like, okay, like we did our best, now I want people to see do better. Like I want them to change the game, like, well, like we did, I guess.
Dang.
Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot.
Okay. Nice answer. That's probably better than anything I would have thought you'd said. So, question 4. What do you think about the people who say things like, oh, Treyarch should have hired you, or you really carried the animation team for Modern Warfare and stuff like that I've seen in comment sections on YouTube?
Oh man. I, I hate it when I see this stuff. I'll say that. That is my first reaction. I hate it. Like, it's more like it's directed to the wrong place, because like it's very nice to receive compliments like that, but at the same time, it's also disregarding the bunch of other people that also work fantastically in view models. I like the biggest like, yeah, I'll address the elephant in the room here. I am probably, and I hate saying this, but like I have a very large following, so it's very easy to point and say like, oh, that guy's really good at what he does, and he should work for X, Y, and Z. When I mean, there's also hundreds of other view model animators out there that are just as good and better, I believe. Like straight up, I don't believe that I'm not the greatest view model animator in the world. Like there are very many people better than me at what they do, and unfortunately, I guess like just because people see me and no one else, they automatically say, "Oh, this guy should be hired at this team at this company," and that's never the case. Like because there are so many other people on my team that are fantastic, and I always try to give credit for what they do, and my boss tries to do the same too. Like for me, it's not really so much about letting people know I did something like, oh, this is mine and whatnot. Like I'm not in it for the ego points. Like it's more like, okay, I want to make sure my coworkers and the people who are good at animations are known for, hey, they're good at animations, because I'm not the only one. Like it's not just me. I did not carry my team. Otherwise it would just be me. That wouldn't be a team anymore. Like I am part of a team. We all work together, and we should all be recognized for our individual talents and group effort, because this is what Modern Warfare was. It was a group effort. I just played a small gear in a big machine.
It's unfortunate that your coworkers don't have the big sub counts you have and just get left in the shadows because everyone just looks at
Yeah,
you.
yeah, and yeah,
Um,
it kind of is, but and some people are okay with that. Like they'll still put reels out there and whatnot, and people like the industry will see. Like they'll find the people regardless, even if they have like a super small following to something super huge. Of course, in the public audience's eyes, it's everywhere. But employers and people who like make games, like they'll know who to find and whatnot, either by word of mouth or networking. So it's more public exposure, um, that it matters. Like because yeah, you people want to be seen for what they do, but there's also like the work side of things. Like you'll be found one way or another.
okay.
Yeah.
Uh, Next question. Okay, so you've only worked at 2 studios so far.
Yep, that
Yeah.
is correct.
So I don't know. Do you know if game dev companies tend to congregate in a certain area? Because like tech companies are in Silicon Valley. The movie industry is in Hollywood. So do
Mm.
game devs tend to follow a certain pattern also, like that?
Ah, well, yes. Like it's a pretty simple yes. Like there are a ton of video game companies in California. I mean, Sledgehammer is in like the San Francisco area. You've got Treyarch, like within an hour away from an Infinity Ward. Respawn. Oh my goodness. So this is actually funny. From where I work, from where I sit at my desk, I can look out my window, and maybe 10 miles away, I can see a building that's right next to Respawn. Like, that's how close it is. It's like, oh, Respawn is literally a 10-minute drive away from Infinity Ward. And yeah, so it does kind of make it harder for less populated areas, because I know there's some like friends of mine who are in like Midwest or Mid East, and there's like no game companies over there. So they're all basically East and West Coast. There's some in Seattle, like Seattle, Washington, where I'm from. Ton in California, and on the East Coast, honestly, I have no idea. but yeah, it's just because there's so much work in California that yeah, companies are like, all right, let's go put them all here in a big desert and get work done.
Okay.
So yeah, very much yes.
Question 6, the meaty one, the big ol' question,
Big one.
the big one. How'd you end up in contact with Respawn? Cause in a pinned comment on your tactical reloads meme video, uh, there's a pinned comment that says you dropped out of college to work for them. Now, did they find you through your YouTube, or like you said, connections and stuff in the industry? Like, how'd you guys meet up? Mm.
How did they find me? Well, I mean, I was just posting like before a lot of this stuff happened. I was still in college. I was just kind of, just getting a general degree in like art because I had no idea what I was going to do after college. I like working in the video game industry was like a pipe dream. Like it was more of a, yeah, it would be nice and it would be cool, but I don't think it's really realistic because I have
Oh
no
man.
idea. And meanwhile, like going through college, I was still putting out YouTube videos at the time, and I didn't think anything of it. I was just doing it for fun. Like the majority of this was, oh, I'm just gonna do this for fun and because I like it. And so um, I put out some videos, and somehow they wound up on Reddit, which I'd probably never heard of.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, I'm getting like hundreds of thousands of views, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like, what happened? And eventually, it got to the point where it reached some studios, like some video game studios, and Respawn was one of them. And they emailed me and they said like, "Hey man, do you want to come out like for an interview? Like we really like your work and whatnot." And there was another studio that said the same thing, and they were both in California. And I'm like, sure, like I guess I can, like I guess I will. So I went out there for an interview, and I was super nervous, and I wore a really bright blue polo shirt, and everybody's wearing a t-shirt because everybody in the video game industry is super relaxed. So I look way too formal, but it's okay. Like I was, um, man, I had just literally turned 20 years old, and I was just like, what the heck is going on? Like, is this what it's like? Because I have no idea. I'm scared. So I, like after the interviews, I went back home to Washington, and I was talking to my professor in college about it, and I was like, man, like I don't know what to do, and like I don't know if I should take this job or not. And my professor, Brian, he looks at me and he says, Ranon, what are you going to college for? And I just look at him and I think like, oh yeah, to
Oh.
get a job. He's like, yeah, go take the job. So I'm like, all right, Brian, thank you, professor, for like helping me through this. So I dropped out of college. That was 6 years ago.
Dang.
And yeah, it's crazy.
Hmm.
And it's weird because I feel like that sort of stuff didn't happen that much back then. Like maybe here and there, but now I'm seeing it happen even more so just because um like people are making fantastic animations, not even like view model related, but just animations in general online, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, like these people are really good. Like they're fantastic animators and artists and whatnot." And and a lot of that is network, and a lot of that is like the networking now, because I didn't even submit an application for Respawn. I had no idea. Like I've never actually submitted a job application for a video game studio before. It's because like networking is even more so nowadays such a huge thing. And and to answer the last part of the question, how did that go with getting hired by Activision? I'm reading this.
Yeah.
Mark Grigsby left Respawn to go work at Infinity Ward, and oh, goodness, I can't exactly remember. I think that was, yeah, I can't remember. But anyway, he gets in contact with me. He's basically like, "Hey, work with me here." I'm like, okay. And they just brought me on. Like, once again, I didn't even have a job application. I didn't even send them a test or anything. Like, they didn't even have, they didn't even require me to take a test, because every studio, you have to take an animation test to see how well you can animate. They want to see what your workflow is, how long it takes you to do something, if you're lazy or not.
Oh.
If you're lazy, it'll show. And a lot of the interviews also focus on like personality, because yeah, it's great to work with somebody who's a fantastic artist, but if they're kind of rude and mean, like, that's going to affect the team. So they also look for stuff like that too. So don't be a jerk when you're in an interview. But yeah, that was a very different experience. Also because like they just Mark Grigsby just brought me on, and next thing you know, I'm just working at Infinity Ward now. So yeah.
Okay. Number 7. Would you recommend people go to college?
Go to college for animation in the video game industry. Man, this is I so the thing is, I don't even think I mentioned it, but I was self-taught, like many others, like many others. Like, I didn't have a clue about animation colleges or anything of that sort. So by the time I went to college, I had already been animating for like 2 to 3 years, and the college I was going to wasn't completely focused on animation. It was just um, it was a community college, I believe, and the program I was taking was just focusing on like general art stuff. Like, you touched a little bit in Photoshop and Illustrator, a tiny bit of like modeling, animation, web design, like all that stuff. So I didn't focus on like one thing specifically, and that did give me the freedom to work on what I wanted. However, it did limit me in some areas, because um, since I've been working with view models for basically my entire animation career, that also hindered me in like full body animation, which I can do, but I'm just not as fluent. I'm not as concise and stuff like that. So going back to, should people go to college? Yes, like I would recommend people to go to college, like animation colleges. There are animation colleges like Anim School or Animation Mentor, and they have fantastic programs and people. But there's also the aspect of, you can just download Blender or a student version of Maya, Autodesk Maya, and 3ds Max, 3ds Max, 3ds Max, and you can just download some rigs and models and just go look up YouTube tutorials, because that's how I started. I just looked up tutorials, how to animate, and I started from there. So people can start anytime. But of course, like techniques on like, oh, this is how you animate like this and this. Like specifically, we want to focus on body mechanics, or we want to focus on prop things. Like that's where colleges really help out, because I was pretty, I guess you could say, I didn't have a direction. Like I didn't have somebody teaching me and say, okay, like Ranon, you're gonna be focusing on weight or timing or like body acting. Like I didn't have any of that. I was just pretty much just mimicking the games that I saw, and I took what I liked. And there is a level of, you do miss something with education in regards to college, for animation. But in general, like, yeah, I would say if you can, like, go ahead and take classes at Anim School or Animation Mentor. I personally haven't, but my coworkers my coworkers right now, they still take classes like every once in a while, just to learn, because it's all a learning process. Animation, like once you get a job, it's not like it just ends. You're like, okay, I'm done learning, I can just work. Like, no, you still want to perfect your craft and take what you've learned and apply it to what you're working on now, because they love it. Like you don't just stop learning. So how many times did I say I would recommend it? Then yeah, I would recommend it. But if you can, like, just go start animating. Like you don't have to go to college, but it would probably help a lot.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So in your tutorials, you show how to rig weapons and stuff. Now, from my knowledge, studios have dedicated riggers for their models and stuff, right?
That is correct.
So is it also their jobs to do the weapons, to rig them, or do you still have to do that yourself?
Thankfully, we don't have to, because there are so many things that need to be rigged in animation for artists and whatnot. There's like human characters that need to be rigged. There's vehicles. There's tiny props. There's environment things, like, I don't know, maybe it's a tarp. Like there are so many things that need to be rigged and whatnot. And the tech animators, that's what they're called, tech animators, who focus on rigging. Like that's their job. That is their job, just to rig things, and it is a huge task. Like I don't think I'd be able to handle it. I barely know how to rig in Maya, and the stuff that they have to do, and like tech artists, man, they're super smart, and they are very incredibly detailed in their work, and that's why everybody, like, we're supposed to kind of stick to what we work on and what we do. Like I just focus on animating. Like if I also had to rig the weapons that I was working on, I'd lose my mind. Like I would go crazy, because there's so many things I need. Like there's so many extra things that I need to do. So I don't do that at work. I don't rig,
Okay.
thankfully, because they just, like, the tech artists, the tech animators' job is to just make sure we just animate and have, like, and just don't worry about anything else. Like their job makes our lives so much easier, and we appreciate them. Like I appreciate them so much, and you gotta always give credit to them, because that is a huge task, and nobody really thinks of it like that, because that's all back end stuff. Like it's all behind the scenes. Whereas animation, you see like, oh cool, like I did a flip and he he jumped in a bucket. I'm like, oh wow, that's cool. But you never think, oh wow, all those controls on that human character are insane. Like they've got bendy controls for the spine, they've got like squash and stretch, and you never see the effort and the work that goes into that because you only see the end product. And that's why I always appreciate the people who are working behind the scenes so that we can show off their work, because it's not only a display of our skill in animation, it's also a display of like, okay, I'm also showing off the work of these artists before me, and I want to do them justice, because like I'm one of the last people to work on in that creation pipeline. Like for like to design a weapon, you have to have a concept artist to like, okay, I want the gun to look like this, and this is for whatever settings, futuristic, modern, for whatever. Like they concept it, and then conceptors give it to the artists to say like, okay, like make it a real model, like give it textures and things like that. And the artists are like, okay, I'm gonna give this to rigging so that they can make all the parts move. And then it comes to me, and I'm like, all right, guys, thank you for all your work. I'm going to do my absolute best in trying to showcase all your hard work and also put my flair to it because I like animating. And then that goes off to the sound guys, and they're like, all right, let's put some sound to this. So that was a very long-winded question. But yeah,
You
I
probably
don't
said
break.
one or two more sentences than you had to, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you work from home? Yes, I know.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I've been working from home since all of this started, almost a year now. I do miss working in an office, like working with people, directly with people, seeing them face to face, hearing their voice, seeing like their body language is infinitely and a lot better than, well, it's a lot better to display information and get feedback. Say, if I were to just give you feedback with my voice, like I can't point to your screen, or I can't act out emotion for you and be like, oh, you do this instead of this. So it does have its benefits though. Like I'm pretty comfortable with being at home. Like um I get to work in the comfort of my own home. Like I can lounge around, like on my breaks in my pajamas still, and watch an episode of a TV show, and be like, okay, it's 1 o'clock, 1:30, time to go back to work. And but I do miss the office life, like being able to go somewhere and just being with the hundreds of other people who are also enjoying what they do.
Okay. Last question. Nice little neat bow on this interview.
Oh, man,
How satisfied are you with your work on Titanfall 2 and Modern Warfare?
that is a very tough question, actually,
Oh.
because when I started work on Titanfall 2, that was my very first experience in creating a, a video game, like a video game that people bought and played. And that was all like my first experience in having a real job. Like basically, I've had like one summer job, but this was my very first like actual job. Was at Respawn, and that was huge. Like I moved to California on my own in the middle of LA. Meanwhile, I lived in a town of 4,000 people. Like culture shock, literally culture shock. I was like, I'm living out here by myself at the age of 20, and I know nobody else out here, and I'm getting a job to work at video games. Like that, just even that was crazy on its own. And the amount of stuff that I learned and worked on at Respawn was awesome, because I was able to do so many new things, and I was able to learn a lot too. And I loved it. Titanfall 2 was probably my favorite like experience in working on a video game. Me saying as I've only worked on like 3 video games, it's not like I've worked on 20 or something.
Very
But
small sample size.
yeah, so it was already it's very special, like what I worked on there. And when I look back at my work now, and I'm like, ooh, that's what I did. Like, I can do better than that now. And that kind of leads into working at Infinity Ward on Modern Warfare, because like now all that shock has gone away of like, okay, and like all the shock of I just moved out here, this is my first job. Like Modern Warfare, working on Modern Warfare was very much okay, it's time to like hunker down and put my skills to the test and try to create the best thing I can ever create. And I tried. I tried. I learned a lot, and I think I did a good job in areas and trying something different. Of course, I look back on my work now on Modern Warfare, and I'm like, okay, like I see and understand what I did good there. Areas here could be better. So like I still am satisfied with what I worked on in Modern Warfare, but it's also a huge different experience working on Timefall 2. But if I had to pick one, that was my favorite.
Go
Actually,
ahead.
no, I can't pick one. They were both great. I'm satisfied with both, but of course, different levels of satisfaction.
You
But
don't have to pick one. I didn't
yeah,
ask you to pick one.
yeah, that's true. Maybe I should leave it there.
Okay. Nice interview.